Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. I lived in Miami 8 years, and I always loved coming back. And I was just thrilled to be able to see the exhibition here as well. Make sure you see it if you haven't had a chance. But it's also a wonderful coincidence, invitation, opportunity to be with Laura and Sofia, both of whom I know their work slightly, or not enough, but I mean, I work for Tate, and this is not, it's going back and forth. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, or should I just yell? Can you hear me? Okay, but I work for Tate, and we recently brought a group to the Dominican Republic, and we had the chance to go to Laura's studio, which was really interesting in terms of getting more of an understanding into her research practice. Because I knew the paintings, we had some conversations beforehand, but that was really exciting in person. And Sofia, I think it was 2 years ago probably, I happened to be in Puerto Rico when she was doing a residency at Ignacio Lopez has a residency program, and so I got to see some of the paintings in person, which is always very important, and we'll talk about that because I don't know how much the detail, hopefully we can see, they can read in reproduction, but of course paintings in person are a very different experience, so we'll talk about that. But the idea is, I want to sort of just delve into looking at each of your works to introduce everyone to your practices. They both just arrived in Miami, they're here for a month, so to use this opportunity to just let people know about your practice and think about how it intersects with this context and this place. So it keeps going back and forth. Don't forget it. It's annoying, right? Okay. Can I get this here? Can you hear us enough? Yes. Okay. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. But okay. So Sophia, we're gonna start with you, and we don't have so many images. So the idea is to just kind of delve in and kind of introduce your practice and maybe talk about some of these works and particularly I think, or you'd start however you want, but you could talk a little bit about how they're produced, because I think what you don't see here, they have a tremendous translucency to them, and also if you look at the material line, you can see that she's using sort of organic materials to make her dyes. But anyway, maybe you could talk about, there were about 4 images to start, but you could sort of, these are very recent works. Yeah.
Yes. So I consider painting beginning from the preparation of the surface itself, and that all starts with the natural dyes. And so thinking of like that initial trace of painting starting from these like large, these stainings that are happening in very organic, intuitive way, in which I'm just kind of like, lunging these fabrics in different dye baths until I arrive to a place where I feel that I can start from here painting. And then I go outside and I have this kind of experience in a lot of wetland environments mostly. I'm always exploring in Puerto Rico different kind of mangrove forests and swamps, and those are kind of the ecosystems that I'm drawn to, that I feel are kind of archives of ecological archives, but also archives of meaning for me in a personal way. And as I'm painting, I kind of start unraveling like this oniric experience that is very tied also to the experience of the history of the land, and the land is of course tied to like a social political weight, and so I'm kind of like interlacing both my experience and then the awareness that the land is vulnerable and that it's like under different threats constantly. Yeah, that's like to start.
I mean, it's hard to see. The ones that I saw, it says canvas, but they were translucent. I remember it's almost like silk.
It's silk.
It is silk.
It is silk. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Sorry. Yeah. It's silk, which the reason I use silk is because I feel it responds to water stains in a very rich way, a way that I feel very identified with. And so it's a way to speak about humidity and in a way that humidity and painting for me have like a lot to talk about. Like humidity stains. It's also a way of mark making. And so I'm thinking of painting in this like very wide way. You know.
And then you have, we'll look at some other, you have works that have weavings or textiles with them, but this one is almost like has an umbilical cord or something coming out of it.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, with that I was thinking of kind of like a kite possibility, but also like a tail. So I kind of wanted to extend create appendages for the painting structure. And in general, I'm always interested in thinking of like widening the notion of painting, and so every work I'm always aware of that. It's a curiosity of like the possibility of the language of painting. And yes, there's also embroidery. So there's which in the photography you can't really appreciate as well. But there's these kind of lines that are embroidered, and they represent these energetic lines in the landscape.
Can you see the next one? So then you have this other line to the practice where it's more sculptural, fully, or woven, or
that is a woven piece of cotton thread and other dyed threads of linen, cotton, and some wool. And here I'm thinking of the invitation for me was to create something that held itself together while not following the uniformity necessarily of like traditional weaving structures. So it was kind of, how can I create something that sustains itself? So that's thinking about autonomy, but also that autonomy is always dependent on, it's not ever fully like independent. And so it's kind of like this like paradox of of autonomy, but also dependence, relationships, thinking of like relationships as something very boundless and interwoven, and thinking of relationships, asymmetries in nature, but also in human to nature relationships. And
this one's a little bit hard to see, but it seems like between the silk of the paintings and the strings of the sculpture. What is this? It's hard to see what it is.
Yeah, tubulations. That was an exploration of creating a structure that responded to an inner feeling of I was thinking of vessel, like a fabric vessel of some sort. And so I was thinking of tubular structures in the body. So that's why it's called tubulation.
If you go to the next one, you've also worked early on. You were in video. You included this in something. Tell us about this piece, or why this piece is important. It's much earlier now.
That piece was created in the pandemic. It's a 5-minute video performance I created in my apartment in Santurce, and it's inspired by the idea of the psychogeography of a space and how spaces are charged with like emotional weight. And in the video, I basically I create a line in space throughout this architectural interior, and then I go discovering different like crevices of the space, and like different portals go opening up, and that's more or less. Okay.
So now we'll jump to Laura. We'll come back, but just to kind of introduce Laura's practice a little bit. I put these two works from calendarios or calendars as a way to begin, but you work in you seem to have two lines, or more than two lines, but there's this line that these abstract kind of pointillist structure, and then you have one that is kind of showing the raw canvas or bleaching it. So we'll start with these. But there's you're pretty consistent. You always do. These come back a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a long story how that arrived, because I used to work with architecture, like observing a lot of like the history of modernity. I was for a while, I studied outside of my country, so I was 8 years out of the Dominican Republic. And when I came back, my area was being torn down for buildings, right? So I started just picking up pieces, and the walls had these textures, which you can find here. It's the gotele, which is this texture they made on the walls in the tropical modernity, no? So, and then at the same time, I was studying kind of the exercise of, I'm gonna say decoration, which is not, of Taino pieces, but like kind of just thinking of the movement that a person would do when they were making incisions in a pot or something. And all these things just came together. I was looking for, I was working with figurative for a long time, and trying to find something abstract. So this came out from there. It's oil, so just direct without mediums.
Can everybody see what's going on there? It's like built up of like these kind of points of oil.
With the spatula?
Yeah, spatula, yeah.
Yeah, so, and then my work started changing and going more and more to nature, like to the more rural spaces. And from the experience of that is where my work feeds, and each time it became more like in connection with the territory. But in this particular series of the calendars are, yeah, these are two versions of this series of the calendars. And what I do is my work feeds from those visits now to try to get involved with the territory on my own terms, no, like outside of this narratives, no, historical narratives that we have that have shaped our relationship with the land that we are part of. And this is a conception of time that comes from that experience, no, like outside of this productive, modern kind of take of time. So what I do is each day I paint like a fraction, and they become calendars in that sense, no?
Yeah, I thought like calendar is part of the time in the process of making, or not necessarily?
Well, also like I guess time in the sense that when you separate yourself from like modern life and you try to just dig into this relationship with the land, you know, and you like escape this like I don't know, constructions of modernity and identity, you know, and you just establish this direct, like more of a soul thing, you know, with the land, and that creates experience of time that is just I don't know, escapes this individual thing of like how productive you are in a certain fraction of a moment, no?
Do you have a chromatic plan with these? Like when you
it's
start
very.
out?
This is a space where it's really just defending my right to intuition. So they are very just intuitive, you know. Like color really depends on maybe the day, the atmosphere. I came back to my country because I have a somatic relationship with it that's just, it's too tight, no? Like my body just doesn't feel right in other spaces. So it has to do a lot with that feeling, you know, the day affects me very much. And I think also I like breaking with this exotic thing of the Caribbean where it's always bright, you know, we always also have this like dim days and stuff, and all this light and all this, just thinking of myself in connection with the land, no? Not my own like psyche, but like how this affects me as a person, as a being, no?
And this methodology does move into direct landscape references.
Yeah, I'm always also moving, like I don't like fixed definitions of things. So also there's like this search to like involve the, I don't know, just in a same thing, like the figurative with the abstract. But then also my works, like it's very based on, I started researching the fragmentation of the island, so it's become more and more like that's my source, no? This conscience of this fragmentation, how it's also in my body and in my being. It's not just a geopolitical thing that escapes, you know, my own, you know, like spiritual and my own experience as a being, no? So also like this painting and one we're going to see further are like commemorative paintings. This is Golfo de las Flechas. It's a spot there in this northeast of the island. where one of the first encounters between the Ciguayos and the colonizers happened, and it's called Gulf de las Flechas because of the geographical condition. The Ciguayos were able to attack with arrows. So, and it's one of the only, it's also spots that's also like named, like you go through there and it says Golfo de las Flechas. We don't have a lot of recognition of this history, especially when it comes to telling the history of the colonized, no? Like it's always defending this, the first colonized place, like a positive thing, you know, it's always defending the colonizers. So it's also commemorative of this. And I spent quite a long time in this area. It's a place I go to a lot.
So then you have this other side of where they're called erasures, and you're actually mixing paint with bleach, no?
With bleach, yeah.
And on the raw, you know, kind of bleaching the raw canvas. So these, in person, the canvas is very present, like the sort of emptiness or of the canvas. And these kind of emerge in and out, or they seem kind of embedded in the canvas in different ways.
Yeah, so it balances me quite a lot to also like be, the dot paintings are quite like labor intensive. So it's always good for me to have something more organic to be working on at the same time. And then also this kind of like unrooted, I work a lot from memory. So this is also comes from that experience of being in this space with nature, trying to get involved with the land. And so from that, always like memory of details, I do like observe a lot. I collect a lot of residual things from there. And the erasure series is one that points to actually the erasure of our rootedness, no, to the land. To me, like and also something I kind of always work with curatorially is the idea that kind of all this system, this oppressive system we live in, it's like it sustains itself on our unrootedness, no? So I guess the erasure thing kind of points to that, and it literally, you know, just using the technique also conceptually, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then we'll go back here. These are slightly older, but yeah. I put these together a little bit. There's this sort of, in slightly older work, there's a lot of domestic references or interior. This is on a shower curtain. Could you talk a little bit about, you know, the inside outside, or this idea of interior exterior? And it seems in your titles it seems you're often talking about a psychological interior and exterior as well as physical, you know, space.
Yeah, totally. I agree with the way you phrased it. It has to, the shower curtain was the time that I was collecting a lot of these secondhand, I'm collecting shower curtains from people in my life. And I really responded to the, in formal terms, to the smoothness of the surface for painting. But additionally, the association that it's like a division of private, of, you know, it's like the shower curtain has to do with privacy, and it's like a spatial division, and everything that has to do with the domestic in that. And additionally, the plastic also became a way to, although in a very indirect way, but to talk about the geological origins of plastic in a way. At that time, I was really thinking about that, like where does plastic come from, and that it comes from fossil fuels that eventually were fossils of animals that existed once, or, you know, so eventually it kind of all becomes circular in a very odd way because plastic is like the least natural thing. But here I was kind of trying to naturalize it in a way, like naturalize the plastic. And then eventually that led me to want to work with the silk, which is like an organic material that's like millennial, it's like millennia old, versus the plastic, which is like, it's like from the last like 50, 70 years. And so it was like these polar opposites that I can know. Yeah.
Sorry, the slide is a little bit up, but I don't know if people can make out, but we're looking at an interior with I don't know what's going, I mean, you're sort of inside and outside at the same time.
Yeah, totally. I'm constantly thinking of like blurring the boundaries of indoor and outdoor, and and I feel especially in the Caribbean, there is a sense of that it's all more permeable, like the relationships of indoor and outdoor, like nature has a way of really like sprouting from all kinds of crevices, and so I was responding to that as well, but also a way to also imagine future ways of designing that are more responsive to the environment, that are not just creating barriers, but actually inviting relationships to the environment, and so that's kind of like I guess it's a way it's like a personal fantasy, but also a collective wish. That.
I mean, I through this video, maybe you could talk about this, but just for its sort of use of domestic objects, but then maybe referencing, I don't know, leakage, flooding, I don't know, what do you...
Yeah, this was an exploration of how to make a line, because I'm thinking of painting, right? So I'm thinking of how to make a line that's a stain that is liquid. And so this was like a way of putting that exercise into play. And then that developed into like this metaphor of like a city skyline almost. And so it's kind of like blurring, once again, like blurring the nature with like water being like this, right? Like this very, it's like a symbol of fluidity and a trans-barrier crossing. And then I'm putting that into question with like the notion of the progressive city, or like the modern city, which is very much associated with glass. And so this was kind of what resulted. The proposal came before the image, though. The proposal was how to make a line that is fluid, and how could that possibly look like. And then the act of watering also was something that I found relevant, like it's like watering plants, or like there's something about pouring paint. And
then I put the next one, just like how did we get from there to here? You started to talk about the shower curtains were like a step towards the silk.
Yeah.
Water becomes a subject, no?
Totally, yeah.
And a method,
Yeah, yeah, and thinking of water in all the ways, not just in bodies of water, but water in the air, water in bodies of organisms. And once again, it's about blurring differences between organisms through the staining methods of layering water stains one after the other, and like having these seepages of color transform one color into the other. And
the line between, we'll talk about this in both your work, but the line between sort of representation and abstraction, is this a place, or is it an abstraction, or is it both for you? It's called a pond of one's own.
Yeah. I think it's both. It's not representing a particular. I don't care so much of representing a particular point, like this cartographic point. Mm-hmm. Definitely, it's like it's more about this world that gets created through me visiting all these different the wetland environments that go layering into my experience of making the works, and so it's almost like an alternate world, but it's informed by my explorations. And so it's an abstraction.
And your use of organic dyes, is there kind of a ritual process of preparing for them, or you just have the dyes going on, or like or do you have these colors around, or do you make them for the painting?
It's a whole process where if I'm dyeing, that's like it's several days of just dyeing. Mm-hmm. So that's why I mentioned earlier that it's like the beginnings of painting are dyeing, mm-hmm. and that has its own process. And one of the many reasons that I'm drawn to natural dyes is because they're representative of, they're like the origin of color, kind of thinking like all these colors come from botanical sources. So there's something that I can't help that's like spiritual about that. Like it's like this color came from the life of a plant, and they're also very mutable. They are, you can alter the, with botanical pigments, you can alter the pH and you can get all kinds of other colors. So there's something very alchemical about that, and that becomes a symbol of of mutability and change and transformation that engages the painting process from the very beginning. And then with the actual painting then of the watercolor, I say actual because it's like with the idea of the brushes and all that. That becomes an extension of that mutability and change that the landscape itself is always doing as well. It's always becoming. So it's about the energy of becomingness. Like this is not something fixed. It's much more than it's much more than a fixed property. It's like a living, breathing, being.
So, Laura, back to these series, the kind of and getting at fragmentation as a strategy. But I was thinking about, do you see these as kind of botanical representations, or what's going, like, why are these just bits and pieces of nature? And they feel a little colonial or something.
Well, I think I don't like to call them botanical because there's not like I don't have an intention of dominating anything, through observation. It's more like an affective thing, but it does kind of carry this I guess intention to heal this fragmentation. So there's a sort of like pain there, no? It connects with that awareness of how we're constantly being torn, out of our roots, no? Through colonial, structures, through the persistence of coloniality, and so there's this, I guess, search to create beauty from that awareness, which is a bit painful as well, and going to these places is to heal that, to heal that unrootedness. Actually, this place, Miami, is a bit important in the personal part of this, because my family migrated here when I was 5, on the side of my father, no? So that really, that created a distance, but also I had to come here every summer, every December, until I was 18. And my family really became very rooted here. They stopped, my cousins, which were very close to me, stopped speaking Spanish. And I saw that process where they just totally left that place behind and never went back. And that really also in my family over there, there was this always kind of rechazo, rejection to, and which is it's very common in certain Dominican groups, no, of always looking outside, this other place is better, we have to be like that. So it took me quite a while to clean myself of that. And I don't know, it's just kind of those things work together, my intention of rooting myself also, because of researching all this thing of the division of the island, I became very aware of how all this has been constructed, through history, through the dictatorship, through many processes, and so all this together, implies a sort of pain, but also the intention to get rooted by my own terms, and recognize also I don't know, myself as a part of this land, and as how this is so important in my being, and I want to just celebrate it at the same time, but it is a bit painful. So it's pieces of nature, pieces of fragmented, pieces, but they're also kind of beautiful in the same way. So, but it's
Just kind of getting more into there's a whole line. I mean, there's a lot of, you have an archival side, a historical investigation. I mean, I don't know if this is one of them, but we have a couple that go deeper into sort of specifics of the history of the Dominican Republic. And I don't know if that's this case.
Yeah, this is one of the first ones that I did that was using this technique, which was in essence it was more a search for abstraction, but combining it with something more figurative. Also, it's from memory. So I wanted to understand like how a map of the Caribbean would come out of my head, you know. And also the red is, I was really just looking at my blood, like, you know, taking the color from there. So the land is like blooded. And the only thing you see different there, the only color, I don't think you can see it here, but there's the division of the island. This is Dominican Republic, and you see the red line. I also worked quite a lot in this commemorative series with the massacre, the Parsley Massacre, which is a massacre that happened in the frontier and this is called Red River. I've done several paintings that are called Red River, and also texts, and I've invited other artists in my curatorial practice to work around this. And it's commemorative of the Parsley Massacre, which is like erased from history. I never heard of it in school. A lot of people don't know anything about it, but it's what actually, like, the division of the island started in the 17th century, the first treaty, you know, it was a longer process, no? But even if there was like a geopolitical, you know, line, the experience there, the living experience, was very mixed until the massacre, no? Which kind of frightened, you know, this connection. People would like cross, you know, to go to school. They would, you know, marry each other and work here or there. I mean, between Haiti and Dominican Republic. And the massacre was one of the first statements that the dictatorship did to cut these relations and really.
What year was that?
That was 1937. The dictatorship started in 1930. And that the whole first decade was full of like symbolic and practical gestures to kind of present the existence of this other side of the island as a threat to our sovereignty, you know? So the thing is with the Red River is that the kind of the epicenter of the massacre started like in Dajabon, which is in the north part of the frontier, and they would throw the bodies. Maybe I need to say that it was the massacre was done with machetes, so that because the only people who had bullets were the government, so it was meant to throw it to more like a conflict between people, no? So they just sent they took prisoners out of jails and stuff, and they gave them rum and just send them to cut up people. They would to try to prove if they were Haitian or Dominican, make them mention the word perejil, which of course meant that a lot of black Dominicans were also massacred, and they cut up the bodies and throw them to the river. So what they say in the towns that were to the south of the river is that the water started becoming red, no? So yeah, I just always try to like.
What we're seeing, is that a red river?
It's a red river, yes. Yeah.
What is it? Very different part of your practice with getting more into the physical fragmentation that you've been working.
Yeah, and the archive. Yeah. So this is a series of 80 kind of drawings that were made when the last division was done. This was between 1930 to 1929 was when the binational conversation started to define the last limits, the words that are the current ones now. But it was a longer process because they had to negotiate some parts, no? So until 1936, more or less, was when the process finished. And then in that process, they made all these drawings. They are in open source in the National Archive. And I work constantly with these images. There are 80 different planes of different parts of the frontier. So I always just, play with the image. And
they're paper printed on
this one I've not done brushes because I've started integrating rubble very recently into the work. Also combined with painting, but this is basically on a surface that's like a thick plastic, so they can go directly on the wall each side, and then the rubble, it's also I pick it up from my walks around, but also because the cut of the island was done after the American intervention of the whole island, which was parallelly and longer in Haiti, but then parallelly for 10 years in the Dominican Republic, and which connects with the history of the sugarcane industry, which was always supported, or it was always possible because of slave work. So during this intervention in the 1914 to longer, 1930 in Haiti, I don't know if it's super accurate, but 1924 in the Dominican Republic. So they established like the whole like modern infrastructure that would make possible to extract more sugar. Now, most of the sugarcane fields were American owned at that time. Then the dictatorship took them away. But so the modernity in the island and the cut of the frontier are interrelated, no? So that's where the rubble and the drawings of the frontier come together.
And it's a very recent piece, which is more personal, the fragmentation, or there's a part
Yeah,
of it
it's a bit like blurry, but
it is blurry, right?
yeah, a bit. I was collecting rubble actually since I came back in 20 years ago after being 8 years away. As I said before, that I was collecting, and the dots came from that. And I never integrated it into the work until now, because now I live in an area that's also it's the colonial zone. It's the historical part of Santo Domingo, and they've been remodeling all the streets and all. So I've been collecting from my walks over there more rubble, and then I had the need for a long time to just kind of connect the personal fragmentation with the fragmentation of the island. Just like stating that, if I belong to this land and it's cut also, it lives like in my body, and in my own experience. So I started recycling paintings. The one on the right this is collage. It's paintings on canvas, and then I place on the rubble. And then there's a calendar, so I'm like fragmenting time, which is already fragmented because the dots are also like a fragmented image. Then this is a landscape that I had done a while ago, and I recycled here. And then the painting in the middle is the painting that was done, the portrait that was done to my mother the day she married my father. Nice. So she wanted to throw it away, but I kept it. I had it like in a storage for a while, and it just made sense, in this.
Is it the actual painting? Or
it's the actual painting, yes. So yeah, that's my most recent kind of search.
So this was like our rapid sort of, charting a little bit of your. Can we go to these are just two examples, but sort of some larger themes just to bring out with both of you. I mean, the idea of landscape and landscape as a genre, and particularly the Caribbean landscape. Like, what do you think are what draws you to that, and what are the do's and or the pitfalls of that as a genre that you sort of address or avoid? Or what a larger question is, or another question with that is the idea of beauty and color in relationship to the landscape and relationship to Caribbean identity and all those problematics. Like, how do you manage that? Because you both work in very beautiful, aesthetically pleasing ways. And how is that a strategy, or or what are the complications of that in different ways?
Yeah.
And that's a lot in there, but just whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah, I already forgot everything.
I'm going to grab onto the beauty aspect, because it's something I think of a lot, and for some time I would kind of. I remember when I did MFA in painting, and there was this notion of like you couldn't make beautiful things, and I had that in my mind for a long time. But eventually, I felt that I had the need to make beauty in my own terms, and that beauty doesn't have to be this like commercial Caribbean shiny bright beauty. With the colors that I am interested in. The way that I am exploring color has a lot to do with the rarity and the awkward relations that can happen with color interactions. And when I'm painting, I'm constantly inviting like muddy colors, or like colors that are not considered like the beautiful colors, like usually it's like bright colors. So I invite a lot of opacity, and even considering that the surface is not white, it's like it's already a stained surface, and sometimes they're more opaque, some are more bright than others. Like there's a spectrum of that, but I think of a lot of like beauty as something that has to do with the rare quality and like the potential of rarity, and widening that potential of strangeness, and how can that widen our notions of the Caribbean identity in a way that's like specific, I guess, to my experience. Like I'm not looking at references of like the paradise. I'm responding to what's really around me. And
but in landscape specific, is it because it allows that line between representation and abstraction, or what about landscape specifically are you interested in, or why are you engaging that as a topic?
Yeah, I think that's one point, like that you can engage with both figurative aspects but also abstract elements and formal explorations, and landscape is a genre that like allows that. But I don't feel I'm holding on to representing a particular scene. Yeah, I think the landscape becomes more of a way to ground these ideas of mutability and change, and it's like literally like by orienting the composition in ways that feel familiar, but it's not about representing like scenes of the Caribbean. Yeah.
Well, that's more about that. Exactly. How about you in terms of landscape specific and this idea of beauty or the attractiveness of the palette and things like that? How do you think about it?
Well, I have just no other way of working. I really, for a long time, I was trying to be more messy, but I've always been very, like, I guess, feminine. Like, I don't know, there's something. But also, like, I think I don't have, like, a search for beauty. I guess I have a very open concept of beauty, which includes a lot of opacity, you know, and the acceptance of my own opacity. I mean, my roots are, like, everywhere, you know, even though, me and my parents are from Dominican Republic, but then before that, it's like all over the place. But I think just like for me, the most beautiful thing is my connection to my land. It's like the thing that I appreciate the most, that I have been able to build on my own. Like I find like immense beauty in just having an intuitive interest in understanding, you know, where I come from and how there's like this built narrative that defines like almost everyone's that I have around relationship and my own before, no? And just being able to have all these experiences that led me to just really want to understand how this was built and trying to, like, you know, deconstruct it. And through the curatorial, trying to also like share that with other people. It's just, to me, like the utmost beauty of life and of my experience. And I also, and also like this really like just the most like anti-colonial thing I think I can do is just be there, you know, like really have a sense of presence and connect in many ways. I mean, through the research, historical research, through the curatorial practice with my community, through my own personal, more intimate, experience when I go, you know, with this need of being in the land, being with the land, observing it, getting to know it, appreciating it. So, yeah.
And that was my next question to both. Both of you have studied, lived, worked outside of the Caribbean, and what does it mean, you know, or how conscious is it to continue to work in the Caribbean, and what does it give you, or how do you think about working locally versus internationally, or what did that experience of being outside, how did that inform the practice and the decision to work, you know, in the Caribbean? Yeah.
Well, before I lived 7 years in New York City, and I had my practice there, which at that time was mostly based off still lifes, because it's the one way that I found it's what I was doing at that time, but I wasn't that happy with it. I actually felt very fragmented, and like I couldn't really find find myself there, in terms of like art, artistically speaking, and so that was like a pull to kind of aim my practice to be in the Caribbean, was that I felt that I had never lived as an adult there. I had been from like 17 to like 27 or so in New York, and I kind of felt like I wasn't, I didn't feel grounded there. I couldn't imagine how can I live here and be in like this like hustle life. I don't know.
In New York.
Yeah, and I felt, okay, I'd rather hustle where I'm from if I have the opportunity, and kind of have and live in a way that's more where I'm more connected to my surroundings, and it also came from a place of like I want to connect with the history of the land and of where I'm from. Like, I don't want it to be this abstracted thing that I'm reading about. I want to live it in a day-to-day way and engage with the community in Puerto Rico of all levels, like artistic, but also the political awareness that is generated and lived there. And so I wanted the work to respond to all those influences. So it's, yeah.
And does it continue to respond? Do you feel that it's a reflection of what you're seeing around you, I mean, directly?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I started feeling more like pieced together once I started living again in Puerto Rico, even though it has, there's many challenges to live as an artist there.
Yeah.
But in terms of being informed, the influences that are lived there, you feel it like in your whole, like in your body, like you just live it in a different way. That I found that it was worth it. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Like I left when I studied there in Chabón, which is a technical, but it's affiliated to Parsons, so it was just normal that people would just want to go to Parsons, But then everyone that went before me told me it was really bad. Like, it really wasn't worth it. So I did go to New York in the beginning, and then I went to Mexico, and then so on. So 8 years. And then I came back, and I had my suitcase done for like 3 years. Like, I don't live here. I just didn't feel like I had like space to grow there. And also in Dominican Republic, like coming back. I don't know, there's like a really big problem with difference there, So I guess for a while I needed to be in a place where I felt like my difference was more, I don't know, accepted. But then also as I started like digging more into history and, I don't know, becoming more aware of coloniality and how it works and the system we live in, it's just like it torn down my appreciation for modernity, Like I don't need those like, I don't think that's necessarily like a good living, So I don't know, like the things that I supposedly don't have in my country are not a need anymore. And as I mentioned before, I also have this somatic relationship with there. It's just, I don't feel like that. My body doesn't feel that, where it has to be like there. And also, just further ahead, I also, when I went to do the master in the Apple, the curatorial master in the Netherlands, I guess I was already like more aware of all this, and I just didn't want to accommodate myself to this modern, kind of supposedly more developed life, like I don't see it like that anymore. So there's too much that I appreciate of my place that we still have, because we don't have that progress. But also in terms of like where I want to put my energy, at least for the curatorial, I think there's a lot to do there, and there's a lot to do everywhere. But I don't know any place more than this place, so I can I guess articulate and conceptualize, what I want to say and who I want to say it to. With much more lucidity there. Also, one of my projects is raising my child, and I think what I've seen everyone do and my whole family is just leave, no, and like abandon that non-progress. And I thought I think there's a beauty there to like also raise my child there with another consciousness and another appreciation and a real like rootedness, you know, for you know, just feeling a part of that place. And yeah, my own body doesn't let me be somewhere else too long. So yeah.
I mean, it seems to me both talk about like the physicality, or even within the sensuality. I mean, you actually use the plants to make the work. You use the rubble from the street, but then you talk about your own physical need. But I mean, and painting is such a physical act. You know what I mean? So that it's just interesting how it seeps in physically, conceptually into the, you know, into two-dimensional or three-dimensional work. I mean, my another question, or just thinking about here and being here in Miami, you touched on it a little bit, but you know how, you know, what is, you know, coming from the Caribbean, what is Miami? I mean, Miami is always a reference point. Like, what has Miami been historically, and what do you think you could find here, or what are you looking here, or you know, what is it as a counterpoint, or you know, or in the rest of your practice?
Yeah, well, actually, we have been speaking about this, so I'm glad you bring it up. Yeah, I'm interested in feeling the ecological continuity of the Caribbean through this land, like just that question, in a very open and almost like playful way, like how, you know, how I think of like the geological relationship, you know, and considering that the types of landscapes that I feel very drawn to are not considered typically like the beautiful beaches that tend to associate the Caribbean and I guess also Miami, you know, like the beach culture. But it's actually more like the swamp and like these areas that are sometimes considered like these stagnant waters that are kind of sometimes like pushed to the side or seen as like like this like stagnant water that is not, it doesn't have the same attractiveness as like the flowing water of the ocean or of the river. And it's kind of like the same consideration that I have when I'm painting in Puerto Rico. I go to like the still waters that harbor a lot of life and have a big, really important ecological contribution in filtering water and preventing erosion.
It's a big, like the mangrove, big issue.
Exactly, the mangrove.
You know, big issue.
And so yeah, for me that's my curiosity, and like how does the plant lineage of the plants I'm used to being surrounded with, how do they relate to the ones here possibly?
Well, yeah, just as you mentioned, we were speaking about this because we both like share this process part where we, you know, engage a lot with nature, or at least with the, let's say, plants, let's say. And there's like this, I mean, through that observation, you can realize how the, you know, the whole Caribbean and this land have, you know, this continuity, and which presents like a familiarity, no? We were seeing the caobas all over the place. We were walking yesterday, and there's like caobas all over, which actually in the colonial times and then with the dictatorship in the Dominican Republic, they cut them all up. So it's funny to find like so many of them. So there's like this just like experiential, you know, in the process, things that you know, make you feel like there is definitely a connection. But also, I think in terms of, you know, like, you know, like standing in the shoulders of like other, like, you know, Caribbean thinking, you know, Caribbean critical thinking, you know, we're always aiming to like, you know, tear down this geopolitical, you know, divisions, which have been very marked in the Caribbean. And I don't know, there's like this thing of belonging to also like the region, no? And for me also, like I was saying before, it's like the personal thing, no? Like my family came here, so it is kind of an extension of my life, no? But also like, in the last work, the what we're seeing with the rubble and the paintings, where I started, just literally putting in personal things, and I engaged with the subject of my mother. But then on my father's side was the side that came here, and I never had like a really I don't know. I don't really know my father that much, but then when I came in December, I reconnected with my family, and they have this old archive. So part of my process here will be to, my uncle has all these pictures for me. Like he's kind of like kind of making me acquainted with a history that's really close to me that I don't really have. So that's part of my project also, keeping like working on that connection of the personal fragmentation with the island fragmentation. So yeah, there's like a bunch of, different aspects that, feel, there's like a link, between Miami and my own place.
Maybe we can open it up to a couple of questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, since both of you pretty much, you lived outside of your countries and went back after studying here and developing as an artist in the US or internationally. How was it to go back to both your countries? Because it happened to me, and I'm just curious how it affected you both in the way of how you look at your own country after having lived outside of it for so long. And was there ever like a consideration of not falling into the exoticism that you would notice that other people looked at your country from outside of it, right? Because that was like a consideration I always had when I went back to my country.
I think I experienced some of that exoticization through the nostalgic distance, and it would bother me a lot, and it made me I always wanted to be visiting, and then it was like, if I'm visiting a lot, that probably means that eventually I should want to be there, because it just felt like the calling was taking me there, that I want to be an artist there, but also I want to be a human being there, and I want to think from there, and at the beginning, there's an acceptance of, no, I'm not connected, I have to just accept that I'm not connected right now, but with time, eventually, it's a process, I think, and I felt...
Has it affected your lens, or are you like conscious of, aware of how that affects your lens of looking at your own culture?
Yeah. I think with time, I go polishing my curiosity at my own terms, so that it's not through the terms of the exoticization, but more about like actually understanding the ecological. In my case, like I'm really interested in understanding like the ecological constitution, which at the time I was very distant from. Like it was just like, oh yeah, beaches. I don't know. Like then it was like, oh, and I'm understanding more like, how is the land actually woven? How does the ocean water relate to the mangrove forest, and then to the petacarpus forest, and then to the dwarf forest up in the mountain, and thinking of like more like the travesties of water in the island, and like studying that more deeply, but also like living it like in more like right, like physically. And so yeah, I think it's about like coming to terms with like, okay, what is my curiosity? What is actually my curiosity, and in a way that's not informed solely by the attractiveness factors that the exoticization lens of the coloniality tends to promote, right? That's more like this like superficial beauty.
So basically, that kind of interest would have been applied if you lived somewhere else, not necessarily back in your country. Like,
yeah,
you would have been interested in the same kind of issues.
Yeah, I think I would have done. Yeah, I think I would do that anywhere I am eventually. If I would have stayed in New York, I probably would have had to do that to connect to some way. Yeah.
Well, I was in a total crisis for the first time I left, which was 8 years. I was in a crisis completely. But I was much younger and I was less aware of, I don't know, like the workings of everything, I guess. And but it did shape my work. That like totally determined my work because it had to become a source of, you know, like resolving that had to become a source, because also I realized that that rejection that I have for being there was imposed. So that's kind of like where I've been working from forever, you know, like kind of healing that, you know. That's exactly what I don't want to do, is reject my own being, no, because that's also a part of like the negation of oneself, to negate your land yeah, it became the source, but it took a while. No, I was very uncomfortable for a long time, especially because of that, because I was a different person and I didn't belong. But I think that also made me grow a lot as a person in myself. You know, like just, you know, kind of become very just you know, have my own voice and stand in my own thing. So which I'm actually doing until today, because the place hasn't changed. You know, but I think that has like a political thing, and it just pushes me, you know, to also, I think that also to work curatorially is also like the way in which I kind of use that energy even more, because I know that's like the general situation, and I know there's a lot of work to be done. So I like to accompany other artists, you know, like finding also that, you know, that kind of energy of presence there, and of kind of becoming aware on how that's been built. That's why also the historical, and even if it maybe seems a bit far-fetched, I think the division of the island has a lot to do with this construction of identity that makes us not want to be there, not want to recognize the great things of that place, and not want to get rooted and connect, and maybe escape and go somewhere else where it's better, no? So
yeah, but I was kind of thinking more of like the stereotypical things, like you know, what is perceived from like this side, you know, like outside of Latin America, and you being back in Latin America, also both ways, you know, like the stereotypes on both directions. I guess it's a long.
it is a long question.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
The
you.
conversation.
We should, is there one more question? We should close a little bit. Is there any other questions? Well, I mean, we'll be here, but thank you both. This was amazing.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you.